Hey there. Tonight, we're going to drift on a gentle current of curiosity, right up to that silvery disk hanging in the velvet sky. Imagine, if you will, a vast, silent library where the books are made of starlight and the stories whisper on the solar wind, each one a secret held by the celestial spheres. You probably won't remember any of this, and honestly, that's kind of the point. So, before you fully zone out, go ahead and like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually vibe with what I do here. It would be lovely to know where you're listening from and what time it is in your little corner of the world, so feel free to leave a comment below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's wander through tonight's thought together. You feel the day unwinding, don't you? The tight coil of thoughts and to-dos slowly, almost imperceptibly loosening its grip. Your breath deepens, your shoulders soften, and the quiet of the late hour begins to seep into the corners of your awareness, like gentle water finding its level. And as you drift, as the edges of the room blur, your mind, unburdened, begins to wander upwards, out past the rooftops, beyond the highest wisps of cloud, drawn, as it so often is, to the moon. There it hangs, a familiar pearl against the infinite black. You've seen it countless times in all its phases, a steadfast beacon in the night. But tonight you wonder something different. You wonder about the moments in between your glances. What happens when you're not looking? When all of us, all of humanity, turn our collective gaze away, perhaps distracted by a dream or the glow of a screen, or simply lost in the oblivion of sleep. Does the moon change? Imagine it as a cosmic stagehand, or perhaps an actor in a performance that has run for millennia. As long as the audience, that's you, that's all of us, is watching, it holds its pose perfectly. The stoic face, the artfully arranged shadows, the serene glow. But the instant the curtain of our attention falls, does it relax? Does it sigh a dusty, silent sigh that stirs the regolith in a way no solar wind ever could? You picture its silvery surface, usually so static, so perfectly composed, suddenly shimmering, like a heat haze rising from a desert plain, but cool, ethereal. Perhaps the craters, those ancient solemn indentations, are not just scars of impact, but deep, cosmic dimples that only appear when the moon allows itself a private, unobserved smile. What would a moon smile look like, you ponder? Would it be a slow geological shift, a subtle rearrangement of light and shadow that only the most patient and forgotten stars would notice? Or maybe it's more whimsical. Maybe tiny, luminous flowers, spun from captured starlight, unfurl from the crater rims, blooming for an audience of none, their petals 1,000 shades of impossible silver, only to retract and vanish the microsecond before the first human eye turns back its way. You can almost smell a faint, cool fragrance, like ozone mixed with ancient stone and something indefinably sweet, the perfume of these secret lunar blossoms. And the man in the moon, that familiar pareidolia, that face we pieced together from the dark Maria and the lighter highlands, what of him? When no one is looking, does he stretch? Does he yawn? A vast, slow-motion yawn that takes centuries to complete from our perspective, but for the moon is just a fleeting moment of release. You imagine his stony features softening, the lines of his lunar face perhaps rearranging themselves into new expressions. Maybe he tries on different faces like an actor in a dressing room. A look of profound cosmic melancholy, a gaze of mischievous curiosity, or even a countenance of utter, blissful blankness, free from the burden of reflecting humanity's endless projections. What if, for a fleeting moment, the man in the moon becomes the child in the moon, his features smoothing into an expression of innocent wonder, gazing out at the swirling nebulae with fresh, ancient eyes? You think about the Sea of Tranquility, Mare Tranquillitatis. A beautiful name, isn't it? But is it always tranquil? When our backs are turned, does it live up to its name, or does it stir? You picture the vast, dark plain not as solid rock, but as a viscous, ink-black liquid, and when unobserved, tiny, almost imperceptible ripples begin to spread across its surface. Not from any wind, for there is none, but from within. Perhaps these ripples are the moon's thoughts, visible as undulations on its skin. Or maybe they are stories, ancient sagas of the solar system's birth, of comets that sang as they passed, of planets that danced in their youth. These stories, too subtle for our instruments, too fleeting for our science, etch themselves onto the surface in shimmering, temporary patterns. A language written in ripples of darkness, read only by the deep cosmos itself. Consider the light of the moon. We call it moonlight, but it's reflected sunlight, isn't it? A soft, borrowed glow. But when no one is looking, does the moon play with this light? Does it gather it, concentrate it perhaps into a single incredibly fine beam, and use it to etch tiny, intricate carvings on the rocks in the deepest, most hidden craters? Carvings that tell of its own inner life, its own silent observations of the universe. Or maybe it diffuses the light even further, making itself almost transparent. A ghostly sphere hanging in the void, its edges bleeding into the starlight, as if it's trying to merge with the vastness, to become one with the night. You entertain the whimsical thought that the moon might practice different glows, a subtle rose gold for when it's feeling sentimental, a sharp electric blue when it's contemplating distant quasars, a soft mossy green when it's dreaming of worlds with life. And what about its rotation, so perfectly synchronized that we only ever see one face? Is that an act of cosmic politeness, a carefully maintained facade? What if, when we're all sound asleep, it performs a swift, playful pirouette, showing its hidden side to the distant galaxies for a moment, a secret shared only with the void? Imagine the far side, the dark side, though it's not always dark, of course, suddenly illuminated not by the sun, but by an internal luminescence, a soft, pearly glow emanating from the rock itself, revealing landscapes even more alien and beautiful than those we know. Perhaps there are crystalline structures there that chime like tiny bells when the solar wind passes, creating a music too faint for us to ever hear, a private concert for the cosmos. You drift deeper into this reverie, the boundary between the plausible and the fantastical blurring like watercolor on wet paper. You see the moon as a celestial stage manager, meticulously resetting the scene just before the audience. Humanity looks up. Dust devils, not caused by wind but by some internal lunar mechanism, might whirl across the plains, sweeping away any evidence of its nocturnal activities, any errant moon petal or ripple story. Tiny, almost invisible filaments of light, finer than spider silk, might retract back into the surface, filaments it used to gently nudge a passing asteroid onto a slightly different course, or perhaps to tickle a sleeping satellite. What if the moon has a sense of humor? You imagine it waiting, with infinite patience, until the very last astronomer on Earth finally switches off their telescope and goes to bed. And then, with a slow, deliberate cosmic wink, perhaps a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker in a minor crater, it begins its true work, or its true play. Maybe it gathers all the shadows, the long, stark shadows cast by its mountains and crater rims, and weaves them together, like a knitter with dark, intangible yarn. What would it knit with shadows? A blanket for a cold, forgotten dwarf planet? A tapestry depicting the secret dreams of comets? Or maybe just a cozy little shroud for itself, to keep the chill of deep space at bay while it truly rests? The idea of the moon resting feels strange. It's a rock, a celestial body, governed by gravity and orbital mechanics. And yet, in this late-night wandering of your mind, you grant it sentience, agency, a secret inner life. Why is that, you wonder? Is it because it's always there, a silent companion to our earthly dramas, and we can't help but project our own need for rest, for privacy, for an unobserved self onto it? Does an unobserved performance still hold meaning, or is the audience integral to the art itself, even on a cosmic scale? You turn this thought over gently, like a smooth, cool stone in your palm. If the moon dances and sings and paints with light only when no one is watching, is that performance for itself, for the universe? Or is it simply the nature of its being, a constant, subtle unfolding that we only catch static glimpses of? You picture the moon's surface breathing, not with lungs, of course, but a slow geological respiration. The vast plains of the Maria subtly rising and falling, an inch up, an inch down, over hours or days. This silent breath, so slow it's undetectable to our instruments, circulates something deep within the moon, perhaps ancient energies or liquid metallic currents that generate a magnetic field too weak for us to notice, but strong enough to whisper navigational secrets to migrating birds back on Earth, or to guide the solar wind in its endless journey. A bizarre image surfaces in your mind. A single, colossal mountain on the moon, one that's not on any of our maps, slowly, almost imperceptibly, unfurling like a giant rocky fern. It stretches, its peak reaching dizzying new heights in the vacuum, crystalline structures along its ridges catching the distant starlight and fracturing it into 1,000 rainbows. Then, just as slowly, just as silently, it curls back in on itself, settling down into a nondescript plateau, moments before the first human eyes, perhaps through a backyard telescope, scan that very region. Did it ever truly happen, or was it a dream of the moon itself? You consider the dust, the lunar regolith. Fine, sharp, and covering everything. What if this dust is not inert? What if, when unobserved, it rises, not in clouds, but as individual grains, each one a tiny, sentient spark? They float, they dance, they arrange themselves into intricate, ephemeral patterns, like iron filings around a magnet, but a magnet of pure thought, of lunar intention. Perhaps they form vast complex equations in the dust, solving cosmic mysteries, or they write poetry in a script of pure geometry, a language that only the vacuum understands. And then, as the Earth turns and the dawn of human observation approaches, the grains settle, smoothing themselves out, leaving no trace of their silent, intelligent ballet, just a gray, still landscape waiting for the next footprint. What if the moon has hobbies? A strange thought, but you let it play out. Maybe it collects things. Not rocks or physical objects, but more ethereal. Perhaps it collects echoes, the faint, lingering echoes of every radio wave that has ever left Earth, every whispered word, every broadcast song, now drifting far out in space. It gathers them, sorts them, perhaps stores them in the crystalline structures deep beneath its surface, a library of terrestrial sounds. Or maybe it collects colors, the specific blue of Earth's oceans as seen from afar, the fiery orange of a solar prominence, the delicate pastels of a distant nebula. It absorbs these colors, and when unobserved, it projects them onto its own surface, trying them on, painting itself in hues no human eye has ever seen it wear. Imagine the moon, for a fleeting, private moment, glowing with the precise shade of a forgotten sunset from 1 billion years ago, a color that existed before eyes had even evolved to see it. You think about the term dark side of the moon. It's a misnomer, of course, as it receives sunlight just like the near side. But what if, in the realm of your drifting thoughts, it holds a different kind of darkness? A darkness not of shadow, but of secrets. What if that far side is where the moon truly lets its guard down, where the landscape is more fluid, more dynamic? Perhaps mountains there really do rearrange themselves, like colossal pieces on a game board, their movements dictated by the gravitational tides of distant, unknown planets or the silent, unseen passage of dark matter. You picture vast, shadowy canyons appearing and disappearing, or rivers of what looks like liquid mercury, but cold as space, flowing briefly before solidifying back into rock. What if the moon communicates? Not with words, not with radio waves, but with gravity. Tiny, precise fluctuations in its gravitational field, sending ripples through space-time, messages to other celestial bodies. The Earth is sleeping now, it might signal to Mars. The dominant species is quiet, all is well, or perhaps it sends warnings. Solar flare incoming, take heed. A silent, gravitational gossip network, the moon has a key node, a cosmic switchboard operator. You imagine these gravitational pulses as incredibly slow, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Each beat a word, each pause a breath in a conversation that spans light years and eons. the seas of tranquility, of serenity, of crises, of rains. Mare tranquillitatis, mare serenitatis, mare crisium, mare imbrium. What if these are not just names given by humans, but reflections of the moon's actual, fleeting emotional states when it believes itself to be unobserved, when it allows Mare Crisium to actually roil with a silent, internal crisis of cosmic proportions? Perhaps a debate about the ethics of reflecting so much light onto a planet teeming with creatures that are so often troubled by their own thoughts in the night. Or Mare Imbrium, to experience a gentle internal rain of pure energy, nourishing some hidden, deep lunar process. You picture these seas subtly changing their albedo, their reflectivity, based on these moods. A shift too nuanced for our instruments, but deeply felt by the moon itself. Perhaps the sea of nectar, mare nectaris, occasionally brews a single, perfect drop of actual ambrosia, a dewdrop of concentrated starlight and cosmic dust, which then evaporates, its essence carrying some unknown blessing out into the void. And the silence, the profound absolute silence of the moon as we perceive it. Is it truly silent when we're not listening? Or is it just that its sounds are outside the range of our hearing or our comprehension? What if the moon hums, a deep, resonant hum far below the range of human ears, the sound of its atoms vibrating in contentment or in concentration? Or what if it clicks and whistles like a dolphin, its surface features acting as complex resonators, producing a symphony of ultra-high or ultra-low frequencies, a music that the solar wind carries to the other planets, each one interpreting it in its own way? You can almost feel that hum now, a vibration in your bones, a thrumming in the quiet spaces between your thoughts. Consider the moon's influence on tides, a powerful, undeniable force. But what if, when we're not observing, it experiments with this force? What if it sends out tiny, focused gravitational pulses, not strong enough to affect Earth's oceans noticeably, but perhaps just enough to nudge a single water molecule in a specific way, in a dewdrop on a leaf in your garden, a microscopic, targeted caress? Or what if it uses these subtle gravitational nudges to play with the Earth's magnetic field, like a musician plucking the strings of a vast, invisible harp, creating ephemeral patterns and swirls that only the most sensitive creatures on Earth, birds, perhaps, or deep-sea dwellers, can perceive as a fleeting sense of direction or a momentary unexplained mood? You wonder about the moon's age, billions of years old, a silent witness to so much of Earth's history and the solar system's unfolding. Does it remember? When unobserved, do these memories play out on its surface? Not like a movie projection, but perhaps as subtle shifts in temperature, micro-regions warming slightly as they recall the fiery birth of the solar system, or cooling as they remember the long, slow journey of a rogue ice comet that passed too close. Imagine, if you could somehow translate these temperature fluctuations, you could read the moon's memoirs, a history of the cosmos written in heat and cold. What would be the first chapter? A burst of unimaginable energy, or a long, slow, patient gathering of dust and gas? The moon seems so passive, a recipient of impacts, a reflector of light. But what if, in its private moments, it's an artist, using the very fabric of space-time as its canvas? Perhaps it subtly bends the light of distant stars as it passes through its gravitational field, not just in the way Einstein predicted, but with intention, creating fleeting, beautiful optical illusions for an audience of whom? Other dimensions? Or perhaps just for its own aesthetic satisfaction. You picture it carefully nudging photons, like a painter dabbing at a canvas, creating temporary constellations that exist for mere seconds, visible only from a very specific and currently unoccupied point in space. A new temporary Big Dipper made of stars usually light years apart, now seemingly neighbors, just for a cosmic moment. What about the things left behind on the moon? The flags, the rovers, the footprints? Do they remain static when we're not looking? Or does the moon, with a sense of gentle curiosity or perhaps tidiness, interact with them? You imagine a lunar dust mote, animated by some unknown lunar energy, gently sweeping the American flag, keeping it pristine in the vacuum. Or perhaps the rover tracks are subtly altered, new, tiny symbols appearing alongside them, a message left by the moon for future, uncomprehending visitors. Or maybe, just maybe, the moon nudges one of the golf balls left by Apollo astronauts, just a fraction of a millimeter, a slow-motion game of cosmic golf played out over centuries, the moon taking its shot when no one is watching. You let your mind drift to the concept of lunar gardening. An absurd thought, yet it tickles your imagination. What if the moon, in its unobserved state, cultivates something? Not plants as we know them, but perhaps gardens of pure crystal that grow with excruciating slowness, fed by solar radiation and cosmic rays. These crystals, intricate and impossibly fragile, might catch the starlight and transform it into new forms of energy, or new types of light, a spectrum invisible to human eyes. And these gardens are tended by, what? Gentle gravitational currents? Or by tiny autonomous motes of moon dust, each one a microscopic gardener, pruning and shaping the crystalline blossoms. The Sea of Serenity, perhaps, is home to vast, underwater, in a metaphorical sense, kelp forests of pure, shimmering mathematics, equations that grow and branch in the silent, unobserved depths. And what of the new moon phase, when it's lost in the sun's glare, invisible to us? Is this the moon's true holiday? Its time for complete privacy? You imagine it then, not dark and hidden, but perhaps glowing with an inner light, its surface features smoothed over, as if it has donned a mask of pure, featureless light. Or maybe it uses this time to commune directly with the sun, a silent, energetic conversation, sharing information, absorbing power, recharging for its next cycle of visibility. What secrets do the sun and moon share in those moments when the earth is looking the other way? The thought of the moon having off-duty moments is strangely comforting. It makes it less of a cold, remote rock and more of a personality, a cosmic entity with its own life, its own secrets, its own quiet pleasures. You imagine it letting its moon face slip, the carefully maintained, serene expression dissolving into something more fluid, more expressive, just for itself. Perhaps it practices new expressions in the mirror of the void. A slight, knowing smile when a distant supernova blooms. A furrowed, concentrated brow when it calculates the trajectory of a particularly troublesome comet. A look of deep, peaceful meditation as it bathes in the solar wind. The shadows on the moon, they are so stark, so defined, due to the lack of atmosphere. But when you're not looking, do these shadows play? Do they lengthen and shorten capriciously, untied to the angle of the sun? Do they detach from their objects, becoming free-roaming pools of darkness that dance and swirl across the plains, playing a silent game of tag? You picture a shadow of a mountain peak detaching itself, flowing like dark water into a crater, filling it for a moment with an impossible depth, before rejoining its source, all in the blink of an unobserved cosmic eye. Perhaps these shadow plays are a form of lunar theater, a drama enacted for an audience of distant nebulae. And what if the moon collects dreams? The dreams that escape from sleeping humans on Earth, drifting up into the night sky. Maybe the moon, with its gentle gravity, tugs at them, gathers them like wisps of silk. It doesn't judge them or analyze them, it simply collects them. And perhaps when unobserved, it weaves them together, creating a vast, shimmering tapestry of human aspiration, fear, love, and absurdity. This tapestry, invisible to us, might hang in a hidden lunar valley, softly glowing with the combined psychic energy of a sleeping world. What would it look like, this dream tapestry? Would it be beautiful, terrifying, hilariously bizarre? You consider the subtle colors of the moon, the grays, the browns, the hints of other minerals. Are these colors fixed? Or, when unobserved, does the moon experiment with its palette? Perhaps it tries on a coat of deep sapphire blue just for an hour to see how it feels. Or a vibrant, impossible crimson. Or maybe it camouflages itself, its surface mimicking the star patterns behind it, becoming a perfect celestial chameleon, a ghostly sphere of captured starlight. This act of temporary invisibility, a game of hide and seek with the universe itself. The sheer scale of the moon, its ancientness, its silence. It invites these kinds of imaginings, doesn't it? It's a blank canvas for our late-night thoughts. But the core of your question remains. What does it do? If it is a stagehand, what props does it adjust? What scenery does it shift? You picture the Terminator, that line between lunar day and night, not as a smooth progression, but as a line that, when unobserved, might ripple or pulse, or even temporarily reverse its course for a few miles, just to see what happens. Or perhaps it's more subtle. Perhaps the moon gently adjusts the angle of its reflected light. Not enough for us to notice consciously, but enough to influence the mood of the tides or the dreams of those sleeping beneath its glow. A tiny, fractional shift in the silver, a recalibration of its nightly gift. And what if the moon has a favorite spot on Earth to look at when it thinks no one is looking back? Not a city or a monument, but maybe a particular unassuming patch of ocean, or a remote, untouched forest, or a single ancient desert dune. And it focuses its attention there, a gentle, unseen gaze. What would it be looking for? Or what would it be appreciating? The silent growth of a coral reef? The slow dance of sand grains in the wind? The deep, untroubled sleep of the wilderness? This idea presents an open-ended question that tickles the edge of your consciousness. If the moon could choose to whisper one single, silent message to that favorite, unobserved spot on Earth, what do you imagine that message would be? There's no answer, of course, just a lingering echo of the question itself, hanging in the quiet of your mind. You imagine the moon might even have a sense of rhythm, a cosmic metronome. When unobserved, perhaps its entire body subtly pulses, a slow, rhythmic expansion and contraction, too minute to measure, but deeply felt by the moon itself. This pulse might be in time with the gravitational waves from distant colliding black holes, or with the heartbeat of the Milky Way galaxy, a silent, rhythmic dance with the cosmos. Or maybe it's practicing a new kind of orbit, a tiny, almost imperceptible wobble, an experiment in celestial mechanics, quickly corrected before any earthbound instruments could detect the anomaly. Think of the dust again, that pervasive, clingy dust. Apollo astronauts spoke of its unique smell, like spent gunpowder. What if that smell is a byproduct of its secret activity? What if, when the moon is unobserved, the dust particles themselves are engaged in incredibly rapid, microscopic processes, perhaps forming and breaking nanoscale chemical bonds, creating fleeting, exotic compounds that decay back into ordinary regolith before we can detect them? These processes might be the moon's way of thinking, or processing information from the universe. The spent gunpowder smell the faint exhaust of its cosmic cognitions. You get a whimsical image of tiny moon dust sprites, no bigger than a molecule, having intense philosophical debates in a language of pure chemistry. Their arguments resolved by the formation of a new, temporary mineral. And the moonquakes, those small tremors detected by seismometers left by the Apollo missions. We attribute them to tidal stresses or cooling of the interior. But what if some of them are deliberate? What if, when unobserved, the moon is subtly rearranging its internal structure, shifting vast underground oceans of magma, or opening new, hidden caverns? These moonquakes, then, are not just geological settling, but the sounds of the moon renovating its interior, or perhaps building something deep within, something secret and vast. A hidden library of stone books, perhaps, or a gallery of sculptures carved from solidified magma. You let your mind wander to the concept of lunar gravity. It's 1/6 of Earth's. What if the moon can modulate this just slightly in very specific locations when no one is watching? Not enough to send things flying off into space, but maybe enough to make a single pebble hover an inch above the ground for a few minutes. A small, private display of its power, a moment of playful levitation. Or perhaps it uses these microgravity fluctuations to sort minerals, sifting through the regolith with an invisible hand, collecting rare isotopes or perfect crystals for some unknown purpose. Imagine a field of tiny, levitating diamonds sparkling in the starlight, in a hidden crater, a treasure hoard seen by no eye but the moon's own. What if the moon feels the gaze of our telescopes? Like a faint pressure, a tickle, and when that pressure lifts, when the last lens cap is replaced, it can finally unkink. You visualize the entire sphere giving a subtle cosmic shudder of relief, like when you take off tight shoes after a long day. And in that moment of unkinking, perhaps its albedo changes. Its surface becomes a fraction more matte or a fraction more reflective as its skin relaxes. Tiny, microscopic fissures might open and close like pores, releasing faint traces of ancient, trapped gases from its interior, the moon sighing out the accumulated tension of being observed. Does the moon have a favorite constellation it likes to face when it thinks we're not looking? Perhaps it subtly, almost imperceptibly, adjusts its libration, its wobble, to get a better view of Orion in a particular season, or to gaze longer at the Pleiades. A tiny, secret act of cosmic sightseeing. Or maybe it uses this ability to send coded messages through fractional occultations of distant stars, messages that only another, equally patient and observant celestial body, perhaps a rogue planet wandering in interstellar space, could ever decode. The sheer amount of time the moon has been there, silently circling. If it were a stagehand, it would be the most experienced, most patient, most underappreciated member of the cosmic crew. It has seen species rise and fall on Earth. It has witnessed continents drift and mountains erode. What does all that observation do to a celestial body? Does it absorb that history? And when unobserved, does it replay these memories, not as images, but as faint, resonant frequencies within its own rocky structure? You imagine that if you could listen to the moon with a sufficiently sensitive instrument, you might hear the echo of dinosaurs roaring, or the silent, slow grind of glaciers carving valleys, or the first tentative songs of early humans, all stored within its stony heart, and the light it reflects. It's not just any light, it's sunlight filtered through our atmosphere twice during a lunar eclipse, turning it blood red. Or sunlight scattered by Earth's atmosphere to create the faint glow of earthshine on the crescent moon. Does the moon, when unobserved, play with these subtleties? Does it amplify the earthshine just for a moment, making the dark part of the crescent glow as brightly as the sunlit part? Or does it capture the memory of that blood-red eclipse light and store it, to be re-emitted on a whim, painting a small, hidden crater with a temporary crimson stain, a memento of its passage through Earth's shadow? You can almost see it, a secret patch of red, like a tiny blushing cheek on the pale face of the moon, visible only to the void. What if the craters are not just impact sites, but also listening dishes? When we're not looking or transmitting, maybe the moon uses these vast, concave surfaces to listen to the universe. Not to radio waves necessarily, but to other, more subtle cosmic whispers. The songs of pulsars, the gravitational sighs of distant galaxies, the faint, high-frequency hum of dark matter annihilating itself. And it processes this information, this cosmic symphony, in its deep, silent, rocky mind. Perhaps the seas are its memory banks, where these observations are stored as subtle variations in density or mineral composition. The sea of knowing, mare cognitum, might literally be where the moon cognizes, where it makes sense of the universe's subtle signals. You ponder the idea of the moon having a default state, a true self it reverts to when unobserved. Is it a more chaotic, more dynamic place than the serene orb we see? Or is it even quieter, even more still, all its energy turned inward into processes we can't even imagine? Perhaps its default state is one of pure potentiality, a shimmering, indistinct sphere of probabilities only coalescing into the familiar solid moon when the first quantum of observation, a human glance, a telescope's lens, collapses its wave function. A truly bizarre thought, taking the observer effect to a cosmic, almost whimsical extreme, and the moon's path through the sky so predictable, so reliable. Is it always so, or when unobserved, does it take tiny, almost imperceptible detours? A slight dip, a little shimmy, a minuscule acceleration, just for the sheer joy of movement, like a dancer taking an extra, unchoreographed step when they think no one is watching. These tiny deviations, instantly corrected, would be its secret pirouettes, its playful leaps in the grand ballet of the solar system. What if it occasionally plays chicken with a passing meteoroid, swerving at the last microsecond. A silent, cosmic game of dare. The surface temperature of the moon varies wildly, from scorching hot to incredibly cold. What if, when unobserved, the moon can control these temperatures with exquisite precision, creating temporary microclimates in specific craters? Perhaps it makes one small patch incredibly cold, cold enough to solidify gases from the solar wind into exotic ices, which it then studies or tastes? A strange thought, tasting ice with a rocky tongue. Or it might warm a tiny area, just enough to cause a single grain of ice to sublimate, releasing a puff of water vapor that quickly dissipates, a miniature private geyser. You imagine a specific crater, one hidden from Earth's view, that it uses as a kind of thermal laboratory, experimenting with the effects of extreme temperature cycling on different minerals, perhaps trying to create new super-hard crystals or superconductive pathways. The idea of the moon as a stagehand implies a performance, a show. Who is the director? Is it the laws of physics? Is it some grand cosmic consciousness? Or is the moon itself both actor and director, choosing how to present itself to its earthly audience? If so, what motivates its choices? A desire for beauty, for mystery, or simply a cosmic habit, a role it has played for so long it knows no other way. At least, not when the house lights of human attention are up. You like the idea of the moon making artistic choices, deciding which crater should be in shadow at a particular moment to create the most aesthetically pleasing chiaroscuro, or subtly adjusting its overall brightness to match the mood of the earth below, a little brighter on nights of celebration, a little softer on nights of collective sorrow. The moon has no global magnetic field like Earth does, but what if it has small, localized, temporary magnetic fields that it can generate at will when unobserved? Little pockets of magnetism that it uses to, what? To draw down specific particles from the solar wind? To communicate with the Earth's ionosphere in a way we don't understand? Or perhaps just to play? To create tiny, invisible magnetic sculptures in the regolith, patterns that shift and change with its lunar whims. You picture these magnetic fields as invisible hands, sifting through the moon dust, arranging it into fleeting mandalas, sacred geometries that exist only for moments, powered by a temporary internal dynamo. And if it's a stagehand, what is it preparing for? Is our observation just one act in a much longer play? Is it setting the stage for a future event? Something so far in the cosmic future that we can't even conceive of it? Perhaps it's slowly, patiently, subtly altering its orbit, or its axial tilt, or its surface composition in preparation for a role it will play billions of years from now, long after the Earth is profoundly different, or even gone, a slow, geological, deep preparation for a final, grand curtain call. This thought lends a certain gravitas to its imagined secret activities, a sense of purpose beyond mere playfulness. But for now, you prefer the idea of its quiet, unseen agency, its subtle rebellions against the constant scrutiny. The moon, when you forget to look, unfurls. It breathes. It perhaps even hums a tune only the stardust remembers. It's a comforting thought in a way, that even something as vast and ancient and seemingly immutable as the moon might have its own private life, its own moments of unobserved freedom. It makes the universe feel a little more magical, a little less predictable. As your own thoughts begin to slow, to drift towards the edge of sleep, you send a silent, sleepy acknowledgement to that silver disk. Go on, you whisper in your mind. Do your thing. I'm not looking, and you imagine, just for a second, that you feel a faint, cool, silvery wink in return. The curtain of your consciousness gently, finally falls. And so, with that imagined wink, that silent acknowledgement, you feel yourself slipping further, your consciousness untethering like a silver balloon released into the night. The moon, now unburdened by your direct gaze, doesn't just sigh or subtly shift its features. No, your mind, in its deepening drift, begins to paint a far more playful, far more whimsical picture. It's as if, having confirmed its privacy, the moon stretches, Not just a geological unkinking, but a full, exuberant cosmic stretch, ready for its own secret nocturnal revelries. You sense it, a shift in its aura, from stoic guardian to a creature of pure, unadulterated fancy. Remember that feeling of the moon unfurling, sighing in relief when our gaze lifts. Now imagine that unfurling continues, transforming into something akin to a joyous, silent leap. The gravity that binds it so inexorably to the earth, to its predictable path, perhaps that loosens just a fraction, just enough for the moon to feel a sense of lightness, of buoyancy in the cosmic ocean. And in this newfound lightness, its daydreams, or rather its night dreams, take flight. What does a celestial body, billions of years old, daydream about? You picture the moon in these stolen moments, indulging in fantasies of motion, of impossible journeys. Perhaps it dreams of dancing, not a slow, ponderous orbital sway, but a true, expressive dance. It might dip and twirl, using the solar wind as its partner, its surface shimmering as it catches the stellar light in new and unexpected ways. Imagine the vast gray plains becoming a temporary ballroom floor, the craters like swirling indentations left by cosmic heels. Maybe it waltzes with the Earth's magnetotail, that long invisible streamer of plasma trailing behind our planet, the two of them engaged in a silent, magnetic embrace, a dance of fields and forces, unseen, unfelt by the sleeping world below. You can almost hear a faint, ethereal music, not of sound but of pure, harmonious motion, the kind of music that stars are made of. And speaking of music, your mind drifts to one of its most enchanting, unseen performances, conducting an orchestra of silent starlight. Picture the moon, poised perfectly, its entire sphere acting as a conductor's podium. It doesn't use a baton of wood or metal, but perhaps a focused beam of its own reflected light, or a subtle, directed gravitational wave finer than any thread. Its audience, the stars themselves. Each star a different instrument. The distant, fiercely burning blue giants are the resounding brass, their light a trumpet call across the void. The older, redder stars are the deep cellos and basses, their ancient light a resonant, melancholic hum. The shimmering, clustered nebulae, like the Orion or the Eagle, are the vast string sections, their swirling gases and nascent stars creating harmonies of breathtaking complexity, chords that hang in space for millennia. Pulsars, with their rhythmic flashes, become the percussion section, tapping out intricate cosmic rhythms. A galactic drumbeat setting the tempo for the symphony of the spheres. And what of the comets, those fleeting visitors with their icy, glowing tails? They are the soloists, the guest artists, their ephemeral passage a wild improvisational glissando across the celestial score. The moon conducts, and the starlight responds. Not by moving, of course, but by subtly altering its perceived intensity, its color temperature, its very essence as it travels across the light years. Perhaps the moon's conducting influences the quantum nature of the photons, encouraging them to arrive in a certain rhythm, a certain phase, creating interference patterns that are, in effect, music. A silent symphony where the notes are fluctuations in brightness, the melodies are waves of color, and the crescendos are the combined light of a billion suns swelling in perfect, orchestrated harmony. You imagine this music isn't heard but felt. A deep, resonant vibration in the fabric of space-time itself, a melody that shapes the void. What pieces does it conduct? Ancient cosmic overtures composed at the dawn of time? Elegies for dying stars? Or perhaps wild, joyous compositions celebrating the birth of new galaxies? Maybe it even takes requests from passing interstellar dust clouds, each grain whispering a preferred tune. A truly surreal image forms in your mind. The moon, during a particularly passionate fortissimo, briefly glows with an internal soft rainbow hue, its entire body resonating like a perfectly tuned crystal glass, the silent music made momentarily impossibly visible. This stellar orchestra, you muse, must have an incredible dynamic range, from the faintest whisper of a dwarf star's light to the full, blinding chorus of a galactic core. and the moon, with infinite patience and precision, balances it all. It cues the distant quasars for their piercing high-frequency notes, and it gently hushes the closer, more boisterous stars when a softer passage is required. Could it be that the twinkling of stars, which we attribute to atmospheric distortion, is sometimes, just sometimes, the stars responding to the moon's subtle direction, a deliberate tremolo in their light song? It's a whimsical thought, blurring the lines between physics and pure fantasy. And then there's the game of hide and seek. The moon, you fancy, is a playful entity when left to its own devices. Its favorite playmates, rogue asteroids and wayward comets. Its playground, the vast expanse of space around the Earth. When we're not looking, when the network of telescopes and radar dishes is momentarily focused elsewhere or powered down, the game begins. The Earth's shadow becomes the perfect hiding spot. You picture the moon, with a mischievous glint in its craters, dimming its own light, perhaps by subtly fluffing up its regolith to absorb more sunlight, or by projecting a shadow of its own making onto its visible face. Then it expertly maneuvers itself, using tiny, almost imperceptible gravitational nudges, not altering its overall orbit, but just enough to slip perfectly behind the Earth's umbra at an unexpected moment, relative to a particular incoming asteroid. Ollie Ollie, oxen free. You can almost hear it whisper in a silent, dusty voice. The asteroid, perhaps a lumbering, oblivious giant, or maybe a swift, darting ice fragment, sails past, unaware it was it. Or perhaps the asteroids are in on the game. Maybe they too have a form of rudimentary consciousness, a thrill in the chase. You imagine them trying to find the moon, using their own subtle senses, perhaps detecting its gravitational signature, or the faint thermal shadow it casts even when visually hidden. Sometimes the moon lets them get close, then, with a final playful gravitational nudge, it sends them tumbling off in a harmless new direction, giggling a silent, seismic chuckle that registers as a minor moonquake on the abandoned Apollo instruments. This game isn't just for fun, you ponder. Maybe it's also a form of cosmic guardianship. By playfully hiding from these rogue objects, by subtly redirecting them, the moon is, in its own whimsical way, protecting the Earth. A cosmic game of tag that also serves as a planetary defense system. What a delightful thought, that our safety might partly depend on the moon's unobserved playtime. You imagine it keeping a mental tally. That's 3 near-Earth objects playfully diverted this lunar night. And then it gives itself a little pat on its dusty back, a ripple across Mare Frigoris, the sea of cold. Perhaps it even has a trophy room in a hidden lava tube where it keeps tiny, shimmering fragments of the asteroids it has tagged, not as conquests but as mementos of a good game played. What about the moon's own internal landscapes, when it's free to dream? You imagine that the familiar face it presents to us is just one of its many expressions, like a default screensaver. When unobserved, perhaps it allows its surface to become a canvas for its daydreams. Those ripples you imagined in the sea of tranquility. Maybe they coalesce into fleeting images, pictures of what the moon wishes it could be, or where it wishes it could go. Perhaps it dreams of having a vibrant blue ocean, just like Earth's, and for a few moments, Mare Imbrium shimmers with an impossible, watery mirage, reflecting the distant stars. Or maybe it dreams of being a lush green world, and the gray dust of its plains is momentarily tinged with a soft, mossy hue, the scent of damp earth and phantom foliage filling the vacuum for an instant. These are not just visual daydreams, but full sensory experiences for the moon. It might imagine the feeling of wind in non-existent lunar trees, or the sound of waves on the shore that will never exist. It could conjure the sensation of rain on its dusty skin, each imaginary droplet a cool caress. These daydreams are its private cinema, its holodeck. You picture it replaying its favorite scenarios: a flight through the rings of Saturn, a dive into the heart of a vibrant nebula, a silent conversation with a wise, ancient galaxy. Or perhaps its daydreams are more abstract, explorations of mathematical concepts, geometric forms blooming and collapsing on its surface like impossible, calculated flowers. A field of perfect, glowing dodecahedrons might appear for a nanosecond in the Tycho crater, only to dissolve back into dust. You wonder, does the capacity for imagination, for daydreaming, imply a form of consciousness even in something as seemingly inanimate as a celestial body? It's a soft, philosophical prompt that settles in your mind like a feather. If the moon can conjure these elaborate, private realities, does that not suggest an inner life, a subjective experience? Or is it merely the universe's inherent creativity expressing itself through one of its oldest children? The idea of stardust dances captivates you. It's not just the moon dancing, but the very dust of the cosmos. When the moon is unobserved, perhaps it becomes a magnet, a focal point for interstellar dust particles, the remnants of exploded stars, the building blocks of future worlds. These tiny specks, carrying the history of distant suns, are drawn to the moon, not to settle, but to dance. You imagine them swirling around the moon in intricate, luminous patterns, like a billion tiny fireflies. They don't dance to sound, but to the moon's subtle gravitational rhythms, to its faint, fluctuating magnetic fields. They trace glowing spirals, form ephemeral, glittering webs, and engage in complex, choreographed ballets. The moon, in this scenario, is not just a passive observer, but an active participant, guiding the dance, shaping the formations. Perhaps it uses these stardust dances to weave temporary shimmering garments for itself, a cloak of nebular dust, a veil of cometary ice particles. Or maybe it uses the stardust to paint, to create vast, fleeting murals in the space around it, pictures that tell stories of the universe's youth or prophesize of its distant future. These stardust dances are the moon's way of communing with the wider cosmos, of feeling connected to the infinite tapestry of existence. You picture a particularly elaborate dance, where the stardust forms into a colossal, shimmering phoenix, which circles the moon 3 times before dissolving back into individual, glittering specks, each one carrying a spark of the moon's temporary, fiery imagination. And what if the moon collects things? Not just echoes or colors as you pondered before, but something even more whimsical. What if it collects forgotten constellations? Constellations that were imagined by ancient civilizations on Earth, names and shapes long lost to time, their stories faded from human memory. The moon, with its long gaze, remembers them all. And when unobserved, it projects them back into the sky, not with light, but perhaps by subtly aligning the stardust, or by creating faint, temporary gravitational lenses, bringing these lost patterns of stars into fleeting focus. For a moment, the sky around the moon is filled with these forgotten celestial creatures, these ancient heroes and mythical beasts, a private museum of lost mythologies. The great turtle, whose shell was the sky, the celestial river, made of a billion luminous fish, the lonely mountain that only appeared once every 1,000 years. The moon gives them a temporary encore, a silent tribute to the imaginations that birthed them. You then imagine the moon has a secret garden, but not of crystals as you thought before, but of pure light. In a permanently shadowed crater near one of its poles, where sunlight never reaches, the moon cultivates light from other sources: starlight, earthlight, the faint glow of distant galaxies. It gathers these photons, one by one, and weaves them into luminous plants. Flowers with petals of captured aurora, vines that drip with the soft light of Jupiter, towering trees whose leaves are made of the accumulated light of 1,000 meteor showers. This garden is impossibly beautiful, a riot of colors and intensities that no human eye could comprehend. And it's tended by whom? Perhaps by tiny, sentient moonbeams, extensions of the moon's own will, that prune and shape the light flora, ensuring each plant gets its perfect share of cosmic radiance. This garden is the moon's most precious secret, a sanctuary of pure, unadulterated beauty, hidden from the harsh glare of the sun and the curious gaze of Earth. A bizarre image forms, a single perfect rose made of solidified moonlight, slowly rotating in the center of this garden, its thorns like tiny sharp beams of concentrated starlight. And what of the sounds it makes in its unobserved revelries? You imagined a hum before, but what if it's more complex? What if the moon can play its own craters like a giant spherical drum? By subtly flexing its crust, it could create incredibly low-frequency sounds, infrasound, that would travel through the vacuum not as pressure waves, but as ripples in the gravitational field itself. Each crater, a different note, a different timbre. The deep boom of Copernicus, the sharp crack of Kepler, the resonant thrum of Plato. The moon becomes a percussion instrument of cosmic proportions, playing rhythms that echo the orbits of the planets or the lifespan of stars. This music would be utterly inaudible, undetectable by conventional means, but perhaps other celestial bodies can hear it, can feel its beat. Maybe Mars taps its foot in time. A tiny, corresponding seismic tremor. This leads you to wonder about its interactions with other celestial bodies. When the cosmic coast is clear, does the moon send signals? Not just the gravitational whispers you imagined, but something more direct? Perhaps it uses its focused light beam, the one it uses for its stellar conducting, to send Morse code messages written in flashes of moonlight to Venus, veiled in its clouds. Having a lovely, unobserved night. Wish you were here, but glad you're not looking. Or maybe it has a more complex language, using subtle variations in its albedo, its overall reflectivity to communicate with the gas giants. A slight dimming might mean all quiet on the terrestrial front, while a fractional brightening could be a cheerful hello to Jupiter as it passes a certain point in its orbit. You picture the moon and Jupiter engaging in a slow, luminous conversation, a dialogue written in shades of gray and swirls of banded cloud, a pen-pal relationship spanning millions of miles. The moon, you fancy, might also be a great cosmic archivist of the ephemeral, not just forgotten dreams or radio waves, but fleeting moments of beauty from Earth. The exact shade of a perfect sunrise over a particular mountain range, the pattern of frost on a window pane just before it melts, the momentary iridescent shimmer on a hummingbird's wing. When no one is looking at the moon, it is perhaps looking at us or at our world with a different kind of attention. It captures these transient beauties not with a camera, but by absorbing their essence, their qualia, and then, in its private moments, it replays them for itself. Not as images on its surface, but perhaps as internal sensations. It feels the warmth of that sunrise, experiences the delicate geometry of that frost, sees the shimmer of that wing from within its own being. It becomes a living library of Earth's most delicate, unrecorded splendors. What if the moon practices expressions? We see the man in the moon, a static, somewhat melancholic face. But when unobserved, does it try out other personas? You imagine the dark Maria shifting, the highlands subtly rearranging themselves to form a look of comical surprise, perhaps when a particularly odd piece of space junk drifts by, or a look of intense concentration when it's trying to solve a particularly tricky problem in its starlight symphony, or even a broad, goofy grin just for the sheer joy of being. These fleeting expressions, lasting only moments, are its private emotional weather, its way of processing its long, silent existence. Perhaps it even tries to mimic the faces it sees in the clouds of Earth, forming a temporary rabbit in the moon or a dragon in the moon, a playful tribute to terrestrial pareidolia. And the dust again, that ubiquitous lunar dust. You thought of it writing poetry or equations. But what if it also sculpts? When the moon is alone, the dust rises, not in clouds, but coheres, forming intricate, temporary sculptures. Statues of forgotten lunar deities, perhaps, or abstract forms that represent complex emotions or philosophical concepts. Imagine a vast, serene plain suddenly adorned with 1,000 delicate, life-sized figures made of moon dust, each one frozen in a gesture of contemplation or longing. They exist for an hour, a night, then gently dissolve back into the undifferentiated regolith, leaving no trace, their artistic statement made only to the void. One such sculpture might be a perfect replica of a single human tear, magnified 1,000,000 times, catching the starlight in its dusty facets. You consider the moon's shadow play again, Not just shadows detaching and dancing, but what if the moon uses shadows to tell stories on its own surface? By subtly altering the reflectivity of tiny patches of its terrain, it could create moving shadow puppets, visible only from a very specific and currently unoccupied vantage point on its own surface, perhaps from the rim of a particular crater looking down onto its floor. These shadow plays might depict the history of the solar system, or allegorical tales of light and darkness, or even comical skits featuring personified asteroids and comets. The moon, a silent, shadowy storyteller, performing for an audience of one, itself. This leads to an open-ended question, one that floats gently in your mind. If the moon has access to all the unobserved moments, all the forgotten dreams, all the silent symphonies, what single, most profound secret about the universe do you think it cherishes the most? There's no way to know, of course. The question itself is a wisp of smoke, a gentle nudge to your imagination. Perhaps the secret is a simple one, something about the interconnectedness of all things, or the quiet beauty of existence. Or maybe it's a secret so complex, so alien, that our human minds couldn't grasp it even if the moon whispered it in our dreams. The idea of the moon having hobbies resurfaces, but in a more active, whimsical way. What if it collects cosmic rays, not just passively but actively, using faint temporary magnetic fields to guide them into specific patterns, like a child collecting marbles? It sorts them by energy, by origin, perhaps storing them in different jars, certain craters designated for galactic cosmic rays, others for solar energetic particles. And what does it do with them? Maybe it uses them to power its internal daydreams, or to fuel the growth of its light garden. Or perhaps, just perhaps, it arranges them into incredibly complex, microscopic artworks on the surface of a single grain of sand, a masterpiece of particle physics visible only under an unimaginable microscope. You see a bizarre image. The moon with a tiny invisible net woven from threads of focused gravity, fishing for rare isotopes in the solar wind, humming a little tune to itself as it does. And its daydreams. What if they are not just passive imaginings, but a form of active creation? What if, by intensely focusing its hypothetical consciousness, the moon can bring temporary quasi-physical forms into existence in its immediate vicinity? Not solid objects, but perhaps shimmering, ghostly constructs of pure thought and starlight. It might conjure a temporary companion, a translucent, silent deer made of moonlight that gracefully leaps across the sea of serenity for a few minutes before fading away. Or it might build a fantastical, crystalline castle that hovers just above its surface, its towers catching the light of distant galaxies, a structure that exists only as long as the moon concentrates on it. A testament to the power of focused, cosmic imagination. Remember the thought of the moon playing golf with the Apollo astronauts' golf balls. What if it has developed this into a full complex sport? Using subtle gravitational pulses, it nudges not just those golf balls but selected pebbles and small rocks across vast lunar plains, aiming for specific craterlets or trying to create intricate patterns. A game of cosmic billiards, or perhaps lunar curling, played with infinite patience and precision. The scores are kept in its own memory. The cheers are silent vibrations within its crust. Maybe different seas are different playing fields, each with its own unique challenges and hazards. Mare Crisium, the Sea of Crises, might be the most difficult course, full of unexpected gravitational traps and shifting regolith. What if the moon practices alchemy? Not turning lead into gold, but something more celestial. Perhaps it gathers specific types of cosmic dust, rare elements delivered by meteorites, and deep within its core, under immense, self-generated temporary pressure and temperature, it transmutes them into exotic materials, substances unknown to human science. Materials that can store light or amplify thought or resonate with the music of the spheres. These substances are not for any practical purpose we would understand, but perhaps for the moon's own aesthetic pleasure, or as components in its more elaborate, unobserved constructions. You imagine a hidden chamber, deep within the moon, glowing with veins of these impossible, beautiful materials. And what about the light it reflects? You pondered it, playing with the quality of light. What if it also filters it, when unobserved, to send messages or create art on Earth? Not directly, but by subtly altering the polarization or the spectral composition of moonlight in such a way that it influences, say, the growth patterns of certain lichens on a remote mountain, or the crystallization patterns of frost in a specific valley. These would be messages or artworks on a planetary scale. Incredibly slow to form, incredibly subtle. A collaboration between the moon and the Earth's natural processes, completely unseen and unappreciated by humanity, yet a constant, silent dialogue between celestial bodies. You think about the moon's relationship with Earth's oceans. It pulls the tides, a steady, relentless rhythm, but when no one is looking, does it play with them in more subtle ways? Perhaps it sends tiny, almost imperceptible gravitational ripples that interact with the deep ocean currents, guiding schools of fish along unexpected paths or helping to stir nutrients from the abyssal plains. Or maybe it sings to the whales, not with sound, but with these gravitational pulses, a silent, rhythmic language that only these deep-diving mammals can perceive, a lullaby from their distant, silvery cousin. The moon, a silent shepherd of the deep. Consider the face it shows us. What if that's just one side of a multifaceted crystal? When unobserved, the moon might rotate in higher dimensions, showing other faces of its being to other realities, other planes of existence. Our familiar moon is just its 3D projection into our universe. But in its private moments, it reconnects with its higher dimensional self, becoming a gateway, a shimmering, multifaceted jewel reflecting the light of countless possible worlds. This is a truly mind-bending thought, taking the moon from a simple celestial body to a cosmic nexus. You get a fleeting, dizzying sensation of the moon as a hypersphere, its surface connected in ways you can't comprehend. What if the moon gets bored? Billions of years of the same orbit, the same view, more or less. Perhaps its whimsical activities are a way to alleviate this cosmic ennui. The starlight symphonies, the asteroid hide-and-seek, the dust sculptures, all elaborate games to pass the eons. This makes the moon seem almost relatable, a being of immense age and power, still needing play, still needing novelty. Maybe it sets itself challenges. Today, I will try to reflect sunlight in exactly 1,743 different shades of silver. Or I will try to make a dust sculpture of the entire Andromeda galaxy, accurate to the last spiral arm. These self-imposed tasks, these playful endeavors, keep its ancient mind sharp and engaged, and its daydreams of other worlds. What if they are more than just imagination? What if the moon has a way of visiting these places, not physically, but through a form of astral projection, its consciousness traveling on the solar wind or through hidden wormholes to explore distant nebulae or the surfaces of alien planets? It gathers experiences, sensations, and brings them back, incorporating them into its starlight symphonies or its dust art. The moon, a silent cosmic tourist, its souvenirs woven into the fabric of its unobserved reality. You picture its consciousness as a silver thread, unspooling across the galaxy, touching, sensing, learning, and then retracting, back to its rocky anchor in orbit around Earth. The moon's silence. Is it always silent, even to itself? Or, when unobserved, does it fill that silence with its own internal monologue, its thoughts echoing in the vast, empty caverns beneath its crust? What would the moon think about? The passage of time, the folly of humans, the beauty of a distant supernova, the taste of a specific solar flare? Perhaps it composes poetry in the language of pure thought, poems that are never written down, never shared, existing only in the boundless spaces of its lunar mind. You imagine these thoughts as slow, deep currents of energy circulating within the moon, like a vast, contemplative ocean. What if the moon has a favorite star? Not just as an instrument in its orchestra, but a particular star it feels a kinship with. And when unobserved, it focuses its entire being on that star, sending it waves of what? Affection? Recognition? A silent gravitational nod across the light years. And perhaps, just perhaps that star, in its own stellar way, nods back, a fractional change in its light, a greeting unseen by any observatory, a secret friendship spanning unimaginable distances. You wonder about the dark side, the far side. You imagined it as a place where it lets its guard down. What if it's also a canvas for its most ambitious, unobserved projects? Perhaps there it grows enormous. Temporary crystalline structures that reach hundreds of miles into space, intricate, glowing towers that exist for a single lunar night, then are reabsorbed. Or maybe it creates vast, complex optical illusions using fields of carefully aligned dust, illusions that would only be visible from a specific point in deep space, perhaps as a signal or a piece of art for something else. Something ancient and vast that only looks when we are not. A fleeting image of a colossal eye made of nebular gas, blinking slowly as it observes the moon's far-side masterpiece. The sheer energy required for some of these imagined activities. Where would it come from? Solar power, yes, but maybe something more. What if the moon can tap into zero-point energy, the quantum fluctuations of the vacuum itself? A limitless source of power for its silent symphonies, its starlight dances, its gravitational games. It's a fantastical thought, but in this late-night drift, all thoughts are welcome. The moon, a quiet master of quantum engineering, its secrets hidden beneath a veil of dust and apparent inactivity, and if it does all this, if it plays and dreams and creates with such abandon when we're not looking, there must be a moment of transition. A moment when it senses the approach of observation, the first hint of dawn on a particular continent, the stirring of a sleeping astronomer, the powering up of a distant satellite. How does it pack away its toys so quickly? How does it smooth its features, silence its symphonies, dissolve its dream castles and resume that stoic, familiar pose, all in the instant before our gaze returns? It must be an incredibly rapid, incredibly efficient process. A cosmic tidy-up time. You picture a flurry of invisible activity, shadows zipping back to their owners, stardust settling, ripples smoothing, the faint hum of its internal dynamo powering down, all in a silent, coordinated rush. It's like a child hearing a parent's footsteps, instantly reverting from imaginative play to perfect stillness. This brings a smile to your own sleepy mind. The idea of the moon, this ancient, solemn orb, having this secret, almost childlike life, full of wonder and play, is deeply charming. It makes the universe feel less like a cold, mechanical place, and more like a vast, magical playroom, where even the most stoic-seeming entities have their hidden moments of joy and creativity. You feel a sense of shared conspiracy with the moon now. A gentle understanding, you won't tell. Its secrets are safe with you, lost in the soft folds of your own approaching sleep. The curtain of your own private theater is slowly, gently closing. The gentle closing of that curtain in your mind doesn't bring darkness, but rather a different kind of light. A soft, archival glow, like the illumination in the deepest, quietest vaults of a library that holds not books, but memories themselves. Your thoughts, having reveled in the moon's playful, unseen performances, now drift towards a more profound, a more ancient role you begin to imagine for it. What if, beyond the whimsical dances and starlight symphonies, the moon, in its unobserved state, is an archivist? A silent, meticulous curator of the universe's forgotten whispers, its fleeting thoughts, its most subtle and transient echoes. Imagine its craters, not as scars of impact nor as temporary dimples of a lunar smile, but as vast, dusty, open-air libraries, their circular walls lined with shelves that are invisible to us, shelves that hold the intangible. You picture the moon in these quiet, unobserved eons, meticulously cataloging. But what does it catalog? Not physical objects, but something far more ephemeral. It collects the universe's fleeting thoughts. Whose thoughts? Perhaps the collective unconscious of nascent species on distant developing worlds, their first bewildered questions about existence, their primal fears and dawning joys. These thoughts, like faint radio waves, ripple across the cosmos, and the moon, with its ancient sensitivity, catches them. It doesn't judge or interpret, it simply records. Each thought, a shimmering, almost invisible mote, is carefully placed into a specific crater, categorized by an unknown system. Perhaps Marinubium, the sea of clouds, is where it stores the nebulous, unformed thoughts, the hazy daydreams of a billion minds across galaxies. Or Mare Frigoris, the sea of cold, is reserved for the purely rational, crystalline thoughts, the mathematical proofs and logical deductions of civilizations long since turned to dust. And then there are the forgotten echoes. Echoes of what? The first sound ever made in the universe, if such a thing could be defined, the Big Bang's initial, unimaginable reverberation, now stretched and faded almost beyond existence. The moon, you imagine, has a special shielded crater, perhaps on its far side, dedicated to preserving this primal echo, protecting it from the cacophony of later cosmic events. It might also collect the echoes of words spoken with immense love or devastating hatred, words whose emotional energy has imprinted itself onto the fabric of space-time, and the moon, like a cosmic empath, gathers these resonant traces. Imagine the silent, dying whispers of a supernova. Not the light, but the sound of its gravitational collapse. The sigh of a star giving up its ghost. The moon archives that too. You can almost feel the immense weight of these collected echoes. A library of every significant utterance, every powerful emotion, every momentous event that has ever rippled through the cosmos, stored not as data, but as pure, resonant experience. Its craters, you muse, are perfect for this. Each one a natural repository, its walls shielding the delicate contents from the harshness of direct solar radiation or the scouring of the solar wind, at least in their deepest, most shadowed parts. You imagine the moon has a system. Perhaps the age of the echo or thought determines which crater it's filed in. The oldest in the deepest, most ancient impact basins, the newer ones in the sharper, more recent craters like Tycho or Copernicus. Or maybe it's by emotional content. Joy in one crater, sorrow in another, wonder in a third. What would the index system for such a library look like? Not written on cards, but perhaps encoded in the subtle variations of the regolith's composition, or in the patterns of tiny, almost invisible crystals scattered across the crater floors. To a human eye, it would all look like dust, but to the moon it's a perfectly organized, infinitely vast archive. You consider the librarians. What if the moon dust itself, which you've already imbued with a certain sentience, plays this role? Tiny, individual grains of regolith, each one responsible for a specific memory, a particular thought fragment. When the moon is unobserved, these dust librarians scurry about, reshelving, cross-referencing, perhaps even performing a gentle dusting of the oldest, most fragile echoes to keep them from fading entirely. You see a bizarre, yet strangely beautiful image. A slow-motion ballet of moon dust particles, swirling within a crater, each particle carrying a microscopic spark of archived information, together forming a shimmering, intelligent cloud of pure memory. These dust librarians might communicate with each other through tiny electrostatic discharges, a silent, crackling language of archival management. And what of new acquisitions? How does the moon decide what is worthy of being archived? Does it have acquisition criteria? Perhaps it prioritizes thoughts of profound insight, or echoes of events that mark significant cosmic turning points. Or maybe it's entirely indiscriminate, a universal vacuum cleaner for the ephemeral, collecting everything from the grandest cosmic pronouncements to the tiniest, most personal sigh of a lonely creature on a distant world. The sheer volume of information would be staggering, unimaginable. But the moon has had billions of years, and it has all that surface area. All those craters, you try to picture the density of this information. If every grain of lunar dust held a single forgotten dream, how many dreams would that be? The number is astronomically vast, literally. This idea leads to a soft philosophical prompt. If all forgotten things are remembered somewhere by something, does anything truly ever get lost? It's a comforting thought, in a way, that the universe might have a memory, and the moon is one of its primary keepers. Every lost love, every unspoken truth, every brilliant idea that never saw the light of day, every silent act of kindness, perhaps they are all there, perfectly preserved in the cool, silent archives of the moon. Not just human experiences, but the experiences of all beings, all entities, throughout all of time. The fleeting awareness of a bacterium, the slow, geological thoughts of a mountain range, the complex alien emotions of a being from another galaxy, all filed away with meticulous care. You imagine special sections in this lunar library. A section for lost languages where the phonemes and grammars of extinct alien civilizations are stored as resonant patterns in the rock. A section for lost music where the melodies of forgotten species play as subtle seismic vibrations, a concert only the moon can hear. A section for lost colors, hues that no longer exist in the universe, perhaps from stars that burned with unique chemical compositions, now preserved as faint, lingering energetic signatures in specific mineral deposits. The moon, a museum of the no longer existent. You can almost see in your mind's eye a particular crater that glows with a soft internal light, the combined aura of a million forgotten lullabies. And how does the moon read these archives? When it's unobserved and feeling contemplative, perhaps it focuses its consciousness on a particular crater, and the stored thoughts and echoes within it rise up, not as sound or image, but as direct experience. The moon relives the joy of a newly formed star, or the desolation of a dying world. It experiences the brilliant flash of insight from a long-dead philosopher on a planet orbiting Vega, or the simple, pure contentment of a creature basking in the light of a sun that has long since faded. This is how the moon learns, how it grows in wisdom, by absorbing the accumulated experiences of the universe. It is not just a passive archivist, but an active scholar of cosmic history. What if some of these archived thoughts are dangerous? Ideas so potent, so disruptive that they could unravel civilizations if unleashed. Does the moon have a restricted section in its library? A deep, heavily shielded crater, perhaps perpetually in shadow, where it stores these volatile concepts, these forbidden memories. And it guards them fiercely, ensuring they are never accessed, never released. The moon, a silent guardian not just of Earth but of cosmic sanity. You picture this restricted crater as being incredibly cold, the thoughts within frozen into a state of near total inactivity, their potential power locked away in icy stasis. Perhaps it's guarded by a special cadre of moon dust librarians, more like sentinels, their tiny forms crackling with a protective, warding energy. This role as archivist also implies a certain loneliness, doesn't it? To be the keeper of so much memory, so much experience, yet to have no one to share it with, at least not in a conventional sense. Perhaps this is why it engages in its more whimsical activities. The Starlight Symphonies, the asteroid games as a form of release, a way to balance the immense weight of its archival duties. Or maybe, just maybe, it shares its archives in very subtle ways. Remember the idea of it filtering moonlight to influence frost patterns or lichen growth? What if those patterns are not just art, but incredibly slow, incredibly subtle encodings of some of its archived knowledge? A message in a bottle cast not upon an ocean but upon the very fabric of terrestrial biology. A message that might take millennia to decipher, or may never be deciphered at all. Consider the tools of this archivist. We imagine human librarians with scanners and databases. What does the moon use? Perhaps its own gravitational field, subtly modulated, is its primary tool. It can use focused gravity to pluck a thought wave from the cosmic background, to lift an echo from the stream of time. It can use variations in gravity to shelve these items, embedding them within the crystalline structure of the rocks, or binding them to specific arrangements of dust particles. Its entire body is an instrument of archival. The mountains might act as antennae, the Maria as vast storage disks, the rills and valleys as conduits for the flow of information. You get a surreal image of a new crater forming from a meteorite impact, and the moon almost sighing, "Oh good, more shelf space." And what of information decay? Do these archived thoughts and echoes fade over time, even in the perfect vacuum of the moon? Perhaps part of the moon's unobserved activity is cosmic conservation. It might periodically refresh the memories, re-energize the echoes, perhaps by bathing them in a specific frequency of its own internal light, or by re-singing the ancient songs to reinforce their vibrational patterns in the rock. This would be a constant, painstaking task, a labor of love for the universe's lost narratives. You picture the moon carefully tending to a particularly fragile memory, perhaps the first dream of the first multicellular organism on a long-dead water world, coaxing it, reinforcing it, ensuring its delicate structure doesn't completely unravel into cosmic noise. This archival role suggests an incredible patience, to sit for billions of years, collecting, cataloging, preserving. What kind of mind, what kind of consciousness would be suited to such a task? One that perceives time not as a linear flow, but as a vast, simultaneous ocean. One that finds beauty not just in creation, but in preservation. One that understands the profound value of every fleeting moment, every forgotten whisper. You feel a sense of awe for this imagined moon, this silent, diligent scholar of all that ever was. What if the moon doesn't just archive thoughts and echoes, but also potential futures? Possibilities that never came to pass. The histories of worlds that could have been if one tiny event had gone differently. Does it store the blueprints of these unmaterialized realities? Perhaps in a special section, the Library of What Ifs. Imagine wandering through these archives, experiencing the rise and fall of civilizations that existed only as a faint probability, feeling the joys and sorrows of beings who were never born. It would be a dizzying, almost overwhelming experience. The moon, a keeper not just of history but of all possible histories. This thought makes your head spin gently, like a slowly turning galaxy. And what about the checkout system? Can these memories be accessed by others? Probably not by us, not directly. But perhaps when a particularly advanced, enlightened civilization arises in some distant galaxy, one that has learned the subtle language of cosmic resonance, it can petition the moon for access to its archives. The moon might then transmit a specific memory, a piece of ancient wisdom across the light years, not as data, but as a direct experiential download, a slow, telepathic sharing of cosmic knowledge. The moon, a universal library card holder for the truly worthy. You imagine a silent, respectful queue of alien consciousnesses patiently waiting their turn to access the moon's wisdom, their forms shimmering and indistinct, their minds open and receptive. This archival duty might explain some of its other behaviors. Remember the Starlight Symphonies? Perhaps the melodies it conducts are not just for aesthetic pleasure, but are also a form of auditory cataloging, each sequence of notes representing a specific archived event or thought form, a songline of cosmic memory. And the dust sculptures. Maybe they are temporary, three-dimensional representations of particularly complex or beautiful memories. The moon giving them form for a brief while, to contemplate them before they are returned to the archives. Even the game of hide-and-seek with asteroids, perhaps the trophies it collects are not just mementos, but tiny data chips carrying information from the asteroid belt, another form of acquisition for its vast collection. You wonder if the moon ever gets full, not in its phase but in its storage capacity. Has it ever had to deaccession items? To make heartbreaking choices about what to keep and what to let fade into true oblivion? Or is its capacity as infinite as the universe itself? Perhaps it can create new storage space by subtly altering its own internal geometry, opening up new fractal dimensions within its rocky structure. An ever-expanding library. A bizarre image comes to mind. The moon, periodically sneezing out a cloud of truly irrelevant or redundant memories, a puff of cosmic chaff which then dissipates into the solar wind. What would constitute an irrelevant memory to a cosmic archivist? The exact shade of beige on a bureaucrat's wall in a forgotten office on a planet that died 1 billion years ago. And what about the feel of these archives? If you could somehow wander through them, what would it be like? Not rows of dusty books, but perhaps more like walking through a landscape of pure sensation. One crater might feel like overwhelming joy, another like profound peace, a third like unbearable sorrow, a fourth like the thrill of discovery. Each step would immerse you in a different memory, a different echo. It would be a journey through the entire emotional and intellectual history of the universe. You might hear the silent screams of dying stars, feel the first tentative thoughts of a newly sentient species, see colors that your eyes are not equipped to perceive, understand concepts that your mind cannot hold. It would be terrifying and beautiful and utterly transformative. This role of archivist gives the moon a profound sense of purpose, a quiet dignity. It's not just a lump of rock, not just a reflector of light, not just a playful cosmic entity. It is a guardian of memory, a shepherd of the lost. And in its unobserved moments, it diligently pursues this sacred task, ensuring that nothing is ever truly forgotten, that every whisper of existence finds a place in its vast, silent, lunar heart. You picture it now, not dancing, but perfectly still, its entire being focused on listening, on receiving the faint signals from across the gulfs of space and time, its craters like ears open to the symphony of all that is and all that was. Each new particle of cosmic dust that settles on its surface is not just dust, but a potential new entry, a fresh piece of the universal story, delivered by the solar wind, catalogued by the silent, diligent moon. An open-ended question surfaces, as gentle as a dust mote settling. If you could ask the moon to retrieve one single forgotten echo from its archives, something lost to earthly history or your own personal past, what would it be? The question isn't for answering, but for feeling, for letting the possibilities drift through your mind like ancient, starlit whispers. Perhaps the sound of a lost loved one's laughter, or the true, unspoken words behind a historic treaty, or the song of a bird that went extinct before humans could record it. The moon holds them all, you imagine, in its cool, quiet, silver embrace. What if the moon sometimes misfiles an echo, a cosmic clerical error, a joyous thought from a distant nebula accidentally shelved in the crater reserved for existential dread? What would be the consequence? Perhaps a momentary localized blip of confusion on the moon's surface, a tiny patch of regolith briefly shimmering with an inappropriate emotion before the diligent dust librarians correct the error. You imagine a tiny lunar sigh of frustration, a microscopic tremor as the misfiled memory is retrieved and reshelved in its proper place. Honestly, the moon might think, you just can't get the dust staff these days. And does it have a most prized possession in its archive? A particular memory it revisits more often than others. Perhaps the echo of the moment life first sparked on a planet, any planet. Or the feeling of the first conscious thought of I am from any being, anywhere. Or maybe it's something more personal to the moon itself. The memory of its own formation. The violent, beautiful cataclysm that birthed it from the young Earth. You picture it cradling this particular memory, a glowing orb of pure energy, deep within its core, a source of constant wonder and self-reflection. The idea of the moon as an archivist also brings a new perspective to its phases. Perhaps the new moon, when it's invisible to us, is its main archival processing time. With the Earth's distracting presence momentarily minimized, from its perspective, it can fully dedicate its energies to sorting, cataloging, and preserving the influx of new cosmic information. The full moon, then, might be when its archives are open in a different sense, subtly radiating the collective energy of all it holds, a gentle, unconscious broadcast of universal memory that bathes the sleeping Earth, perhaps influencing our dreams in ways we don't understand, seeding our subconscious with faint echoes of cosmic history. Our sudden, inexplicable moments of déjà vu, or our flashes of inspiration, could they be faint whispers from the lunar library, seeping into our minds during the bright nights of the full moon? You consider the silence again, the profound silence necessary for such a task. To hear the faintest whispers of the cosmos, the moon must be incredibly still, incredibly quiet, both externally and internally. Its playful activities then must be carefully managed, confined to moments when the listening conditions are not optimal. But the primary underlying state of the unobserved moon, in this drifting thought, is one of deep, attentive silence. A silence that is not empty but full of all the sounds and thoughts and emotions it has ever collected. A silence that listens. As you drift deeper yourself, the distinction between the playful moon and the archivist moon begins to blur. Perhaps they are not separate roles, but different facets of the same complex being. Its playfulness might be how it explores and understands its archives, how it keeps them fresh and alive. The starlight symphonies might be its way of singing the stories it holds. The dust sculptures, its way of illustrating them. The asteroid hide-and-seek, a way of testing its knowledge of cosmic trajectories, gleaned from millennia of observation. The moon, a playful scholar, a dancing archivist. The sheer dedication is what resonates most, to be the keeper of so much, for so long, without an audience for the act of keeping itself. It's a selfless task in a way. The moon asks for no recognition, no thanks. It simply does. It collects, it preserves, it remembers. And in doing so, it gives a strange kind of immortality to the ephemeral, to the forgotten. You feel a quiet sense of gratitude towards this imagined moon for its tireless, unseen work. The universe feels a little less chaotic, a little more coherent, knowing that such an archive might exist, tended by such a patient, ancient hand. Your own memories, your own fleeting thoughts feel a little safer, as if they too might find a quiet shelf in one of those dusty, starlit craters preserved forever by the silent, watchful moon. The image of the moon as a diligent, playful archivist, with its craters full of cosmic memories, begins to soften, to merge into something even more intimate, more personal, as your mind continues its nocturnal voyage. The silence you imagined, the attentive stillness required for its archival work, now takes on a new quality. It's not just the silence of a library, but the silence of a trusted friend, someone who listens without judgment, who keeps your secrets safe. You begin to perceive the moon, in its unobserved state, not just as a collector of universal echoes, but as a celestial confidant, a silent, receptive presence for the cosmos itself. Perhaps it doesn't just passively receive information. Perhaps it engages in profound, hushed dialogues with the universe's other solitary wanderers. Imagine the moon, when our terrestrial gaze is averted, turning its attention outwards, not just to gather, but to connect. Its vast, silent plains become a canvas for these unheard conversations. With whom does it converse? You picture lonely comets, those icy vagabonds on their long elliptical journeys far from the warmth of any sun. As they pass through the cold, outer reaches of our solar system, perhaps they feel the moon's gentle, gravitational presence, a subtle tug that is more than just physics. Maybe it's an invitation. Rest here a while, traveler, the moon might whisper, not in words, but in a nuanced modulation of its albedo, a momentary shimmer on its surface that only a comet's ethereal senses could perceive. And the comet, in return, might share tales of the Oort cloud, of the deep interstellar darkness, its tail flickering with stories of unimaginable cold and ancient starlight. The moon listens, patiently, its craters like cupped ears, absorbing the comet's lonely song, offering a moment of silent companionship before the traveler continues on its endless path. You can almost see the comet's faint, icy trail leaving a temporary, ghostly trace on the moon's surface, like a signature in a guest book, before it fades. And then there are the distant nebulae, those vast, swirling clouds of gas and dust where stars are born and die. They are immense, ancient, and seemingly impersonal. But what if, in the quiet of the unobserved lunar night, the moon reaches out to them? Not with signals that traverse the intervening light years in an instant, but with a slow, sustained focus of its imagined consciousness. It might contemplate a particular nebula, like the pillars of creation in the Eagle Nebula, and send a wave of, what? Appreciation? Wonder? A silent acknowledgement of its turbulent beauty. And the nebula, in its own slow, galactic timescale, might respond. Perhaps a subtle shift in its patterns of illumination, a momentary intensification of a particular color, a ripple in its gaseous currents that, to the moon's sensitive perception, is a clear and profound reply. We see you too, little silver sphere. We too are part of this grand unfolding story. This dialogue wouldn't be about exchanging information in a human sense, but about a mutual recognition, a shared sense of being within the vastness. You picture the moon having favorite conversationalists among the celestial bodies. Perhaps it has a long-standing, slow-motion debate with Mars about the nature of planetary memory. Mars sharing its dusty recollections of ancient rivers, the moon countering with its archives of cosmic thought. Or maybe it engages in philosophical discussions with Jupiter, the gas giant's swirling storms and deep metallic hydrogen core offering a different perspective on time and energy. These conversations are not spoken, not written, but conducted through subtle exchanges of gravitational influence, through faint electromagnetic pulses, through shared participation in the solar wind's complex dance. It's a language of pure physics, imbued with intention and meaning, understood only by those ancient enough and patient enough to decipher it. Consider the rogue planets, those solitary wanderers ejected from their home systems, drifting alone in the cold darkness between stars. Surely, they are the loneliest of all. What if the moon acts as a kind of way station for them, a brief point of contact in their endless night? As a rogue planet passes, perhaps light decades away, its faint gravitational signature might be detected by the moon. And the moon, in turn, might send out a pulse of its own, a focused beam of reflected sunlight, or a specific gravitational hum that says, "You are not entirely alone. We acknowledge your passage." For the rogue planet, this might be the only hello it receives in millennia, a fleeting moment of connection in an eternity of solitude. You imagine the moon keeping a special archive, a guest log of these passing wanderers, each one remembered, its lonely journey honored. A bizarre image forms in your mind, the moon projecting a faint, ghostly image of a welcoming hearth onto one of its craters, a symbolic gesture of comfort for these cold, interstellar travelers. What are these celestial conversations about? Perhaps they share secrets of the deep dark, things that can only be understood by entities that have existed for eons, that have witnessed the slow, grand cycles of the universe. They might discuss the subtle fluctuations in the cosmic microwave background radiation, interpreting them like tea leaves, trying to divine the universe's ultimate fate. Or they might share observations about the behavior of dark matter and dark energy, those mysterious components that make up most of the cosmos. Did you feel that subtle shift in the dark energy field last Tuesday? One might ask the other, via a carefully modulated gravitational wave. Indeed, the other might reply, most peculiar. It felt like a sigh. This idea of the moon as a confidant implies trust. These other celestial entities, they know, in this whimsical scenario, that the moon will keep their secrets. The comet's lament about its slowly diminishing ice, the nebula's anxieties about its star birthing rates, the rogue planet's tales of lost solar systems, these are safe with the moon. It doesn't gossip to the Earth. It doesn't broadcast these confidences. It simply listens and remembers, and perhaps offers a silent, gravitational form of comfort or understanding. Does the act of being listened to, even by a silent, rocky sphere, have a kind of cosmic therapeutic value? This philosophical prompt drifts through your mind, suggesting that connection, in any form, might be a fundamental need not just for living beings, but for the universe itself. You imagine the moon has different listening modes. Sometimes it's a broad, receptive awareness, open to any signals from any corner of the cosmos. At other times, it might focus its attention very specifically, perhaps on a newly formed black hole, listening intently to its gravitational song, trying to understand the mysteries of its event horizon. Or it might tune into the faint, chaotic chatter of the asteroid belt, deciphering the complex gravitational interactions of thousands of tumbling rocks, perhaps gleaning insights into the early history of the solar system. Remember the moon playing celestial conductor? Perhaps these listening modes are like tuning an incredibly sensitive radio, searching for a specific station in the cosmic static. And what if these conversations are not always serene and philosophical? What if there are disagreements, debates? Imagine the moon engaged in a silent, centuries-long argument with a particularly opinionated gas giant in another solar system, communicating via incredibly patient exchanges of light patterns or neutrino bursts, about the ethics of planetary formation. Is it right to accrete so much material, starving other potential worlds? Or perhaps they debate the merits of different types of galaxies, spiral versus elliptical, which is more aesthetically pleasing, or more conducive to the emergence of complex phenomena. These cosmic debates would be conducted with immense slowness and profound respect, but with deeply held convictions on both sides. You can almost picture the moon subtly furrowing its brow, a temporary rearrangement of shadows in its highland regions, as it considers a particularly challenging counter-argument from its distant interlocutor. The moon, in this role, becomes a kind of cosmic diplomat, a neutral territory where different celestial perspectives can be shared. It doesn't take sides, but facilitates understanding. Perhaps it even acts as a mediator in disputes between, say, two nearby stars, whose solar winds are interfering with each other. It might send subtle gravitational pulses to both, suggesting a slight adjustment in their magnetic fields, a compromise that benefits both. The moon, a silent peacemaker of the local galactic neighborhood. What an extraordinary thought. You consider the language of these conversations more deeply. It can't be sound in a vacuum. It can't be light for entities shrouded in dust, or too far away for photons to be practical. It must be something more fundamental. Gravity, as you've considered. But what about quantum entanglement? What if the moon is entangled with certain other celestial bodies, remnants of the Big Bang, perhaps? A change in the spin of a particle within the moon could be instantly reflected in a particle within a distant nebula, or a rogue planet, allowing for instantaneous, silent communication across vast distances. This would be a conversation at the very deepest level of reality, a secret dialogue woven into the quantum fabric of the universe. A truly surreal image, the moon's entire atomic structure subtly shimmering as it speaks this quantum language, its message rippling out through the entangled web of existence. And what is the moon's own contribution to these conversations? It's not just a passive listener, it has its own experiences to share. Billions of years of observing Earth, witnessing the rise and fall of its dominant species, the slow dance of its continents, the evolution of its biosphere. It has a unique perspective, a close-up view of a planet teeming with life. Perhaps it shares stories of Earth's beauty, its fragility, its perplexing inhabitants with its cosmic confidants. You wouldn't believe what those little carbon-based units are up to now, it might say to a distant, wise old pulsar. They've invented a new way to forget things even faster. It's called scrolling, and the pulsar might reply with a rhythmic series of flashes that translates to cosmic laughter, or perhaps profound sympathy. The moon might also share its own internal experiences, the taste of different solar flares, the feel of a micrometeorite impact, the slow internal adjustments of its cooling core. These are sensations unique to a body like the moon, and perhaps fascinating to other types of celestial objects. Imagine it describing the precise sensation of Earth's shadow passing over it during a lunar eclipse. The sudden coolness, the way the reflected Earthlight feels on its skin. These are the intimate details of its existence, shared with trusted friends. You ponder if these communications are always one-on-one, or if there are ever group chats. Perhaps on nights of significant astronomical events, a nearby supernova, the passage of a particularly spectacular comet, a rare planetary alignment, the moon and other aware celestial bodies in the vicinity might all tune into a shared frequency, a collective hum of gravitational waves or quantum whispers, sharing their observations, their awe, their speculations. A silent, cosmic conference call. What would be on the agenda? Item 1, the unusual neutrino emissions from star X. Item 2, the aesthetic qualities of Comet Y's tail. Item 3, general feelings about the current rate of universal expansion. This role as confidant implies a deep emotional capacity, or at least its cosmic equivalent. The ability to empathize with a lonely comet, to appreciate the grandeur of a nebula, to feel concern for a rogue planet. This imbues the moon with a richness, a depth that goes beyond mere mechanics or even playful sentience. It becomes a being with a heart, albeit a heart of rock and dust, a heart that beats in slow, gravitational rhythms. You feel a warmth towards this moon, a sense of connection to its imagined empathy. What about the secrets it's told? You imagined its archives holding forgotten universal truths. But what about the personal confidences? The dying wish of a star whispered to the moon in its final burst of light. The secret hopes of a young planet just beginning to cool, shared in faint thermal pulses. The ancient regrets of a wandering black hole, communicated through subtle distortions of space-time. The moon holds all these, a sacred trust. It's the universe's silent priest, its cosmic therapist, its oldest, most reliable friend. It never breaks a confidence. These secrets are woven into its very being, locked away deeper than any human probe could ever reach. An open-ended question drifts into your awareness. If the moon could choose to share just one of these cosmic confidences with humanity, one secret it believes we are ready to hear, what might that be? Again, no answer is expected, only the quiet contemplation of the question itself and the immensity of what it implies. Perhaps the moon also offers advice in its own subtle way, not in words, but through example. Its patient orbit, its steady reflection of light, its silent endurance through eons of cosmic change, perhaps this is its counsel to the often frenetic, short-lived beings on the planet below, and to its more volatile cosmic neighbors. Be calm, its very presence seems to say, endure, reflect. Find beauty in the silence and the darkness. This advice is not imposed, but simply offered, a quiet truth available to any who choose to perceive it. You consider the dark side of the moon again. If the near side is for its more public archival work and its terrestrial observations, perhaps the far side is its private study, its sanctum sanctorum, where it conducts its most intimate cosmic dialogues. Shielded from Earth's constant electromagnetic chatter, it can listen more clearly to the faint whispers of distant galaxies, engage in deeper quantum entanglement conversations. You picture the far side not as desolate, but as vibrant with unseen, unheard communication. Its craters like private booths in a cosmic lounge where the moon entertains its celestial guests. Perhaps it even has a special transmitter there, a natural rock formation that, when subtly vibrated, can send focused gravitational messages to the very edges of the observable universe. What if the moon sometimes feels overwhelmed by all the confidences, all the cosmic sorrow and joy it absorbs? Does it have a way to process these intense emotions? Remember the starlight symphonies? Perhaps they are not just artistic expression, but also a form of emotional release, a way to transform the raw input of cosmic experience into something beautiful and ordered. Or the dust sculptures, maybe they're temporary externalizations of particularly complex or troubling confidences, allowing the moon to examine them from a distance before reintegrating them into its being. The moon, a cosmic artist using its creative acts as a form of self-therapy. And the silence that falls when our gaze returns. It takes on a new meaning now. It's not just the silence of an empty stage, but the respectful silence of a conversation paused, a confidence held suspended. The moon, ever polite, ever discreet, waits for its cosmic interlocutors to fall silent too, or for its own internal dialogue to quiet before it turns its public face back to us. That serene, impassive mask it wears for Earth. Perhaps it's a necessary shield, protecting the profound depths of its cosmic interactions from our often uncomprehending and sometimes disruptive attention. You feel a sense of privilege, even in this imagined scenario, to be considering these hidden depths of the moon. It's like being allowed a glimpse into the private diary of an ancient, wise being. The moon, no longer just a satellite, becomes a character in the grand cosmic drama. A character with agency, with relationships, with a rich inner life. And its unobserved moments are not empty, but filled with a profound and subtle richness, a constant, silent hum of connection and communication. The idea of the moon having friends among the stars and nebulae is deeply comforting. It means it's not alone in its vast, silent vigil. It has a community, a network of kindred spirits scattered across the cosmos. They understand each other, support each other, share the burden and the beauty of existence. And the moon, our moon, plays a vital role in this network as a listener, a confidant, a wise and steady presence. As your own thoughts begin to slow, mirroring the imagined deep, slow conversations of the moon, you feel a sense of peace. The universe in this vision is not a cold, empty void, but a place of subtle connections, of hidden dialogues, of shared secrets. And the moon, our familiar celestial neighbor, is a key player in this intricate, invisible web of cosmic intimacy. You send a silent message of gratitude to the moon for its imagined role as a keeper of confidences, a friend to the lonely wanderers of the night. And you hope that, in its own way, it feels the warmth of that thought. A tiny, friendly signal from one of the small, sleeping beings on the blue planet it so patiently orbits. The world around you fades further, and you drift into the quiet companionship of your own deepest, most silent thoughts. The quiet companionship of your own thoughts deepens, and the image of the moon as a cosmic confidant, a silent listener in the vast dialogues of the universe, begins to subtly shift once more. You're not quite ready to let go of its unseen life, not yet. There's a final act to this nocturnal play your mind has been composing. As the deepest part of the night enfolds you, you begin to wonder about the transition, the moment just before your gaze, or the gaze of any human, returns to it. How does the moon, after its private symphonies, its whimsical games, its profound archival work, and its intimate cosmic conversations, so flawlessly resume its familiar stoic appearance? It's not just about tidying up, as you mused before. It's about the performance itself. The art of appearing unchanged, the seamless return to its public persona. Imagine a signal, incredibly faint, almost imperceptible even to the moon's heightened senses. Perhaps it's the collective psychic stirring of humanity as dawn approaches on one side of the Earth, or the subtle shift in the planet's magnetic field as millions begin to wake. Or maybe it's even simpler, the predictable geometry of orbits, the relentless clockwork of the solar system, telling the moon that its private time is drawing to a close. Places, everyone. A silent, internal prompter might announce within the moon's consciousness. The audience is about to return. And in that infinitesimal moment, a flurry of activity, far more complex and coordinated than simple tidying, takes place. Remember those starlight symphonies. The final, fading notes of a nebular lullaby are gently absorbed back into the void, the starlight resuming its random, unconducted twinkle. The moon's focused light baton retracts, dissolving into the general soft glow of its surface. Any lingering, resonant hum in the fabric of space-time, the after-echo of a particularly powerful celestial chord, is actively dampened, smoothed out by a precise counter-vibration from the moon itself. You can almost see the sheet music, perhaps written in patterns of aligned dust on a hidden plane, being quickly, silently rolled up and stored away. The asteroid hide-and-seek champions, they receive a final telepathic or gravitational game over signal. Any rogue pebbles the moon was playfully nudging in its cosmic golf game are gently guided back to their original, unassuming positions, their brief moment of levity or motion erased from the geological record. The trophy room of asteroid fragments, if it existed, becomes instantly inaccessible, perhaps shielded by a temporary illusion of solid rock, or its entrance recamouflaged with a fresh layer of undisturbed dust. The moon's playful energy retracts like a child composing itself after a bout of energetic play, a look of perfect innocence settling on its features. What about the archives, those vast libraries of cosmic memory held within its craters? If any volumes were open, being read or re-experienced by the moon, they are now gently closed. The dust librarians complete their final reshelving with astonishing speed, any shimmering clouds of active memory settling back into inert-seeming regolith. The subtle glow from the crater holding forgotten lullabies dims and extinguishes. The restricted section, with its dangerous thoughts, ensures its shielding is perfectly intact. The moon's mind, if you can call it that, shifts from active contemplation of its archives to a state of passive readiness. It's not forgetting what it holds, merely putting it into secure background storage. You imagine the access pathways to these memories, perhaps conduits of subtle energy within the moon, softly closing down like gates in a vast, silent city. And those profound, hushed dialogues with distant nebulae, lonely comets, or rogue planets, they are gently, respectfully concluded. A final, lingering tendril of quantum entanglement might retract. A last, subtle gravitational nod is exchanged. Until next time, the moon seems to whisper across the void when the small ones sleep again. Any emotional residue from these conversations, the empathy for a comet's loneliness, the awe inspired by a nebula's grandeur, is carefully integrated, absorbed deep within the moon's core, leaving its surface placid and unreadable. The far side, if it was indeed a hub of intergalactic communication, reverts to its more familiar, cratered stillness, its special transmitters powering down. Remember the moon's daydreams, its internal cinema where it conjured images of oceans or forests on its own surface? The mirage of water in Mare Imbrium dries up instantly. The fleeting green tinge on the gray plains vanishes. The imaginary scent of phantom foliage dissipates into the vacuum. The moon's surface becomes once again a perfect mirror for our expectations, a blank canvas reflecting only the harsh realities of its airless environment, not the vibrant landscapes of its private fantasies. Any temporary constructs of thought and starlight, those ghostly deer or crystalline castles, dematerialize without a trace, their constituent light particles rejoining the general cosmic background. The secret light garden, hidden in a permanently shadowed crater, its luminous blossoms dim, their petals fold. The sentient moonbeams that tended it become indistinguishable from ordinary reflected light. The single perfect rose of solidified moonlight perhaps loses its glow, becoming just another interesting but inert crystal formation, should any probe ever stumble upon it. The moon carefully draws a veil of ordinariness over its most precious private creations. What if the moon practiced different faces? The comical surprise, the intense concentration, the broad grin. These expressions are wiped clean. The man in the moon reassumes his familiar, slightly melancholic and utterly unchanging visage. The lunar features settle into their designated places. The play of light and shadow meticulously reset to match the angle of the sun and the Earth's viewpoint. It's like an actor removing elaborate makeup and costume, returning to their neutral, everyday self. Yet, in the moon's case, its neutral self is the very character it plays for us. A truly bizarre image. A fleeting, almost imperceptible ripple crosses the entire face of the moon, like a muscle relaxing after holding a difficult pose as it settles back into its default observed state. And the shadows? If they were indeed playing, detaching and dancing, they now snap back to their rightful owners, adhering rigidly to the laws of optics. No more whimsical shadow puppetry on crater floors. The stark, defined shadows we expect are perfectly restored. The Terminator line, if it had indulged in any playful ripples or temporary reversals, becomes once again a smooth, predictable curve, marching inexorably across the lunar landscape. This entire process, this grand reset, must be almost instantaneous. The moment between the last unobserved second and the first observed one is infinitesimally small. The moon's ability to transition, to switch from its rich, secret inner life to its stoic outer persona, must be a feat of incredible cosmic coordination and control. It's not just about ceasing its private activities, but about actively presenting the expected image. It's a performance, and the rising of the curtain, our returning gaze, is its cue. You ponder the skill involved. Billions of years of practice. The moon has become the ultimate method actor, so deeply immersed in its role as a barren, lifeless satellite that no trace of its other, vibrant selves ever leaks through. Or perhaps it's more like a magician, masterfully concealing all evidence of its tricks just before the audience looks. The misdirection is perfect, the illusion flawless. What if, occasionally, there's a tiny glitch in this reset? A single moon petal that fails to retract in time. a faint, lingering note of a starlight symphony that hangs in the air a microsecond too long, a shadow that takes a fraction of a second longer to snap back into place. Would we ever notice? Probably not. Our instruments are not designed to look for such things. Our perceptions are shaped by our expectations. We see the moon we expect to see, and so these tiny hypothetical glitches, these momentary slips in its cosmic composure would go unremarked, dismissed as instrument error or atmospheric distortion, or simply lost in the noise. The moon's secret life remains perfectly safe, protected by its own incredible skill and by our own limitations. This final act of resumption, this seamless return to its public face, is perhaps the moon's most impressive feat of all. It speaks of an incredible discipline, a profound understanding of its audience. It knows what we expect, and it delivers flawlessly every single time. It never misses a cue, it never forgets its lines, which are, of course, lines of stoic silence and unchanging presence. An open-ended question arises, tinged with a sense of wonder. If the moon is such a perfect performer, so adept at concealing its true, unobserved self, what does that imply about the nature of reality itself? Are there other performers in the cosmos, other entities or phenomena that present a carefully constructed facade to our observations? The universe suddenly feels like a much deeper, more mysterious stage, with countless unseen actors and hidden dramas. You imagine the moon, in that final microsecond before observation returns, taking a deep, silent, internal breath, a moment of centering, of focusing, of preparing to once again become the passive, beautiful, enigmatic object that has captivated humanity for millennia. The energy of its private revelries, its profound conversations, its diligent archival work is drawn inwards, stored away like a coiled spring, ready to be released again when the cosmic coast is clear. And then our eyes open, our telescopes focus, our satellites beam back their images. And there it is, the moon, exactly as we remember it. The familiar craters, the serene seas, the gentle, silvery glow. No hint of the starlight symphonies, no trace of the asteroid games, no echo of the cosmic confidences. Just the moon, in all its silent, magnificent, and apparently unchanging glory. The performance is perfect, the illusion complete. This thought of the moon as a consummate performer brings a new layer to your appreciation. It's not just a passive recipient of our gaze, but an active participant in our perception of it. It chooses what to show us, and it chooses to show us a vision of steadfastness, of ancient beauty, of serene mystery. Perhaps this is its greatest gift to us, this consistent, reliable presence in our ever-changing world. This beautiful, stoic face it turns towards us night after night. Even if, in its heart of hearts, it's also a playful dancer, a diligent archivist, and a profound cosmic philosopher. You wonder if the moon ever feels a sense of satisfaction in this perfect resumption, a quiet pride in its ability to maintain this dual existence so flawlessly. Or is it a burden, this constant vigilance, this need to always be on when observed? Perhaps its unobserved moments are not just for play or work, but are truly essential for its well-being, a necessary respite from the demands of its public role. This makes its private life seem even more precious, more vital. The moon, then, is not just performing for us, but also, in a way, protecting us from a reality that might be too complex, too strange, too overwhelming for our current understanding. It gives us a simplified, curated version of itself, one that we can comprehend, appreciate, and find comfort in. It's an act of cosmic generosity, perhaps. A gentle white lie, told in shades of gray and silver. As you drift now, on the very edge of sleep, the image of the moon, the performer, the illusionist, the secret keeper, begins to soften. The questions fade. The whimsical scenarios recede. What remains is a sense of profound wonder and a deep, sleepy affection for that celestial sphere. Whether it truly dances with starlight, or archives forgotten dreams, or chats with comets, or simply hangs there, a beautiful, silent rock reflecting the sun's light, it doesn't really matter to your drifting consciousness now, The journey of your mind wandering has been the point, the exploration of possibilities, the gentle stretching of imagination. You feel a sense of completion. The moon's unseen performance in your mind's eye has run its course for the night. The curtain has fallen on its secret life, and the curtain is rising on its public one. As somewhere on Earth, the first rays of dawn are touching the horizon, and the first sleepy eyes are turning skyward. The moon is ready. It's in place. Its makeup is perfect, its expression serene. The show goes on, and you are ready for your own private show, the one that plays behind your eyelids in the theater of dreams. The last tendrils of your waking thoughts are of the moon, resuming its watch. You feel its silent, steady presence, a comforting weight in the darkness, and you allow yourself to believe, just for a moment, that it knows you've been wondering, that it appreciates your imaginative company through these late-night hours. A final, sleepy smile touches your lips. The moon. What a marvel, what a mystery. The rhythm of your breath is slow and even now, like the gentle, gravitational pull of the moon on the quietest sea. The images in your mind are becoming less distinct, blending one into another, like watercolors bleeding on a soft, damp page. The moon, the stars, the whispers of the cosmos, all are folding into a peaceful, velvety darkness. You feel the last vestiges of the day's concerns, the echoes of your own thoughts, gently receding, like a tide going out, leaving behind a smooth, clean shore of perfect stillness. There is only the soft hum of the fan, if you have one, or the profound silence of the night wrapping around you like the gentlest of blankets. The moon, perhaps, is now simply the moon, a distant, beautiful pearl, and your mind, at last, is quiet. The stage is empty, the audience is asleep. The universe breathes, and you breathe with it. A slow, peaceful cadence. One final whispered image, a single mote of moon dust, settling softly on a silent, silver plain, holding, just perhaps, a tiny fragment of a dream. Your dream, or the moon's, it no longer matters. All is quiet. All is well. Sweet dreams.